Hello, this is Matt on the Moon Lambo channel. I got 3 topics to discuss in this latest Moon Lambo Hot Jam. We'll be starting with this one from you today. Here's the headline. Ripple CEO predicts when SEC lawsuit is likely to end. And spoiler, it's not going to be quite as quick as we'd really like it to be necessarily, though Brad Garlinghouse does see potentially could see something a little bit sooner, but he didn't seem too confident, let's just say that. But he makes his prediction. Also, Kim Jong-Ginsberg, SEC Supreme Leader and Dictator, he was on Jon Stewart's new show, or new-ish show, which I believe is called The Problem. And Gary Gensler, I tell you, this freaking guy, he is all about the publicity. You know, from the whole Kim Kardashian thing to now jumping on board here with Jon Stewart. And it's interesting, though, because Jon Stewart, he actually did kind of push back and challenge him a bit, and it kind of brings up the idea of regulation by enforcement and critiqued him a bit. And then there's also this story from the Daily Hodl. Grayscale Investments makes move against SEC, files opening legal brief in ETF rejection lawsuit. So you may recall that Grayscale, which is a firm that offers a Bitcoin trust and other crypto products for accredited investors, they've been seeking for a long time to get approved by the SEC for a spot Bitcoin ETF, an exchange-traded fund, and that would be traded on a traditional exchange like NASDAQ or the New York Stock Exchange, and you would not have to be an accredited investor to access that, and it would be backed by physical Bitcoin, meaning Bitcoin would actually have to be purchased. Obviously, Bitcoin itself isn't physical, but that's what is meant when people say that it would be backed by physical Bitcoin, that it would actually be held, which is very different than what you have in Bitcoin futures markets, where they're just betting on up or down price action for Bitcoin effectively, but Bitcoin itself isn't held in order for that to be facilitated here. Well, they sued the SEC after being denied their application for a spot Bitcoin ETF. And they actually sued. It was amazing. They had the thing ready to go because they sued on the same day that they were denied. Well, now things are moving along in this, and they made their initial move here on their opening legal brief. So plenty to discuss. But before going further, I do want to be clear. I do not have a legal or financial background of any kind. I am not offering legal or financial advice, and you definitely should not buy or sell anything because of anything I say or write. I'm just an enthusiast who enjoys making YouTube videos about crypto-related topics, but just as a hobby and just for fun. All right, so into this first piece from you today. Ripple CEO predicts when SEC lawsuit is likely to end. Ripple CEO Brad Garlinghouse told an audience at the DC FinTech Week conference that the SEC's case against his company would be resolved in the first half of 2023. And here's a direct quote. So I do think it will be fully briefed in front of the judge by mid-November. Federal judges work at their own pace. It's very hard to predict, end quote. And so I'll pause to note here. I had previously at some point seen him make a statement that worst case scenario, Brad Garlinghouse said that he could actually see this thing ending in June of next year, 2023. That's what he thinks the worst case scenario would be, which is in line with what he said here too. Now, mind you, though, that does not include any appeals. And once the SEC loses, which is what I suspect is probable, should this thing not end up being settled, if the SEC loses, they're going to appeal this thing. I mean, there will be years of nonsense going down the road if we don't get a settlement here. Years and years and years. And it kind of begs the question, like, what would happen to XRP in the meantime? Well, hopefully the answer is that once Ripple wins, assuming that is what happens, XRP would be immediately relisted on exchanges within the United States, and on-demand liquidity corridors could open back up. But there's still going to be this thing that's looming over our heads as XRP holders and as participants in the world of crypto here in the United States, at least in particular, because you could, in theory, get a very, very, very bad ruling at some point years down the road if the SEC successfully appeals. Now, not that I would think that they'd, be likely to have a successful appeal, but do you really think the SEC is going to drop this? You think they're going to cede any ground there? I'm not optimistic, which is why, in a way, I won't be, let's just say this, I won't be sad if there's a settlement, because I understand what settlement means. In fact, check this out. They talk about this. Let me get a little bit further into this, because Brad Garlinghouse talked about this topic here. Piece continues. Optimistically, the lawsuit will be resolved within the next 3 or 4 months, Garlinghouse says. However, he doesn't rule out that it could take longer than that. So let's pause a note here. So if it's 3 months from now, well, we're already in October, so potentially January, he could see it ruling, a ruling on this finality, but it doesn't seem likely that you're going to see anything in the calendar year of 2023. But that's in line with what we've seen from attorneys within the XRP community. I don't know of any attorney within the XRP community that thinks it's probable we're going to have summary judgments completed in this calendar year 2022. Ain't happening. Piece continues. Garlinghouse also said that Ripple could consider a settlement with the SEC, but he stressed that XRP has to be recognized as a non-security. And here's the quote from Brad Garlinghouse. The settlement opportunity has to start with the idea that XRP is not a security, end quote. And I'll note that if you're looking at the screen, you can see this. They said XRP is now a security. That's because that's a typo. He said XRP had to be starting with the idea that XRP is not a security. And then they also state here, however, the SEC, since the SEC boss views the vast majority of crypto tokens as securities, it creates a conundrum for how to settle anything. And I thought about that too. Like if you're the SEC, fine, if you're backed into a corner, you're going to have to find some sort of creative way to make a settlement work. But given that the stance of the SEC, including Kim Jong-Gensler, is that everything that exists is a security, how do you save face when settling? I mean, yeah, there would be some sort of monetary victory and they could tout that, but they got to be able to save face or it's not going to happen. There's going to be something there. But also, Ripple has been very firm on this, and I do believe it. There's no settlement with the SEC and between the SEC and Ripple if XRP is not cleared on a go-forward basis, period. There can be no possibility of recourse for the SEC or else there will be no settlement. Ripple's very firm on that. Now, on to the next topic. Here's a tweet from Kim Jong-Gensler himself. And he wrote, yesterday I had a chance to sit down with The Problem. So I'll pause and note again, that is Jon Stewart's program. Yesterday I had a chance to sit down with The Problem to talk about equity, market structure, and a number of other topics. Check out my conversation with Jon Stewart on the podcast today. And I will note, just because this is pretty damn funny in my humble opinion, I responded to Gary Gensler's little bitch ass and I just wrote one word. Resign. And I want to note that because I got 503 likes on mine, and on his real tweet with, real content, no, mine's got real content. His tweet only got 382, mine got 503. And mind you, he's got 250,000 followers compared to my measly little 98,700 here, which goes to show just how much people do not like Gary Gensler. I just thought I'd highlight it so we could all have a little lull about it, a little LOL action here. Here's what Attorney Deaton had to say, though. Mr. Chairman, and he did, for those of you on the screen, you can see this, but he retweeted Gary Gensler's stupid little tweet there, and Attorney Deaton says, Mr. Chairman, you go on popular podcasts, but not to Congress. You cut videos about one of the most popular people on Earth, Kim Kardashian, for a $1 million fine, but refuse to acknowledge 74,000 innocent XRP holders with a $15 billion loss to individual wealth. Respectfully, sir, your priorities suck. I like that whole thing, except for the part where John Deaton wrote respectfully. No, I'm kidding. He's being an adult here. But his priorities obviously do suck. But you know that everything Gary Gensler is doing is in his best interest. He's looking at his next job opportunity, and it's not for money. He's got plenty of money. He's reportedly worth well over $100 million. He's doing this because he's an egomaniac, so far as I'm concerned. And he doesn't care about the 74,000 innocent XRP holders and the $15 billion loss. He knows he goes after Kim Kardashian, one of the most famous people on the damn planet, for a measly $1 million relative to $15 billion anyway. And it's a publicity stunt, which is exactly what he did. And here was a clip of the program called The Problem with Jon Stewart and Gary Gensler. And I'm not going to play the clip itself. I don't need to get the idea across to you. But John Deaton's crypto law organization, in addition to sharing this clip, wrote the following. When Jon Stewart rightly started nailing Gary Gensler on selective enforcement, The Problem heavily edited Gensler's useless, stammering reply. And that part is kind of unfortunate here. But Jon Stewart, hey, credit where it's due. Because Gary Gensler was talking about going after Kim Kardashian, this or that. And he's like, well, what about like the Goldman Sachs of the world? And I think he may have said like Barclays. And there wasn't really a good answer to that, but you know what? Some heavy and happy editing makes the problem go away, doesn't it? And then there's also this from the Daily Huddle. Grayscale Investments makes move against SEC, files opening legal brief and ETF rejection lawsuit. And I want to note at the outset, before even jumping in the article, it could just be clear what an ETF is and why it's important. So there are ETPs, which are exchange traded products, which are cited in this article, and an ETP is a catch-all for other types of things that fall under that category. One thing that falls under the category of ETP is, which again stands for exchange traded product. One type of thing that falls under that is an ETF, which is an exchange traded fund. And so it's just a type of ETP effectively, and an ETF is pegged to an index. You could have an ETF that's pegged to the S&P 500, for example, or you could have an ETF that's pegged to Bitcoin directly. So it would just follow the price action of Bitcoin, and the underlying asset does have to be actually held. So there's a real movement of money. Bitcoin would actually have to be held by whatever entity it is that gets approved for a spot Bitcoin ETF. And then everybody understands what the price of Bitcoin is, and so in terms of what people are paying for the ETF itself, it'll just match. The problem works itself out. People understand that's the purpose of it, that's what it is. And there are other types of investment vehicles that fall under the category of ETP, like there's an ETN, but we don't need to get into that for the purposes of this video. It just stands for Exchange Traded Note. So just know that ETF, it's a little subcategory of what an exchange traded product or ETP actually is. And again, a crucial reason of why this is important, not only is Bitcoin physically held, which impacts supply and demand, it also opens up the floodgates because, we're talking about the ETF itself being sold on, like, it would be like a major exchange like NASDAQ or New York Stock Exchange. And so people don't have to sign up for cryptocurrency exchanges. All of a sudden, there's just this new opportunity, and people will be like, well, this is here. I'll just start buying it. And you don't have to be an accredited investor if it's on NASDAQ or the New York Stock Exchange. So there'll just be like a flood of money, and I can only imagine what that might be. And maybe fine. Maybe there's not some huge jump up immediately in price, but I'll tell you this: when Bitcoin futures opened back in 2017, admittedly it was during the last part of a bull cycle, Bitcoin went from what was then an all-time high, I believe, like around 10,000 to doubling in a matter of 3 or 4 weeks up to $20,000. So we'll see. But anyway, piece reads as follows. Crypto asset manager Grayscale is making a legal move against the U.S. Securities and Exchange Commission, alleging that the SEC is showing bias towards bids for a Bitcoin exchange-traded fund, or ETF for short. In its filing, Grayscale says the SEC's stance of allowing Bitcoin futures ETFs but not spot Bitcoin ETFs is inconsistent. And I'll pause a note here too. I want to make sure I don't forget to say this, and it just hit my little Moon Lambo brain right here. I'm willing to speculate on what might be going on here, and I'm not the first one to come up with this concept. I didn't come up with this myself, but I think it's plausible here, and all sorts of people have talked about this. Like, we understand the way the world works, right? We're not naive as XRP holders, right? We understand that relationships matter. Well, the theory here is that the first firm that's ever going to get approved for a spot Bitcoin ETF will be BlackRock, which is the world's largest investment firm with something like $8.5 trillion in assets under management, because all those people are connected to the people at the highest levels of the United States federal government. That's the theory, including the SEC. So that's the theory. And it's interesting because BlackRock, they're already coming in, and they're basically just copying Grayscale's product, the Bitcoin Trust. And that's what they're working on right now. And then it looks like their plan's the same. Try and convert that to an ETF. That's literally what Grayscale's been trying to do for many years. Looks like BlackRock's just copying the playbook there. And given that they're BlackRock, we'll see what happens. Hey, maybe we get surprised and some other firm ends up getting approved first, but don't be surprised if it's BlackRock. I'm just saying. Piece continues. Grayscale says that if the SEC can approve Bitcoin futures ETFs, it can also approve spot market ones, as they carry ostensibly the same risks. The firm cites the SEC's rejection of New York Stock Exchange ARCA's attempt to create a spot Bitcoin ETF earlier this year. At the time, the SEC found that the venture was too risky and thus repudiated it. And I'll just pause and note, this argument is complete bunk as far as I'm concerned, as is articulated here in this opening brief. So here's the quote from Grayscale. Check this out. Just months earlier, however, the commission had approved 2 separate proposals for ETPs, exchange-traded products, that hold as assets Bitcoin futures, a derivative of Bitcoin, after finding that those ETPs did not present an unacceptable risk of susceptibility to fraud or manipulation. But the price of Bitcoin futures is subject to the identical risk of fraud and manipulation as is the spot price of Bitcoin. That is because Bitcoin futures represent the market's prediction of future spot Bitcoin prices and prices in the Bitcoin spot and futures markets align more than 99% of the time. If, as the commission has concluded, Bitcoin futures ETPs do not pose an unacceptably high risk of fraud and manipulation, then by definition, neither do Bitcoin ETPs. End quote. So think about that. I don't know how you get around. Well, you don't in good faith. You can make up BS reasons, as the SEC has done. But as they cited here, and this is a fact, this is data, Bitcoin spot and futures, they align more than 99% of the time. So manipulation a problem, the what-a-who? It's a disingenuous argument. It just is. So I like that Grayscale is bringing the fire to the SEC, and we'll see what happens here. But this might take a while. I mean, maybe we get lucky and you get an ETF this year. I'm not counting on it, though. Because look how long this is taking. Well, look at how long this would take to get settled. So if Grayscale is going to get it, not this year. And if it's BlackRock, well, they're just now actively jumping into crypto. Yeah, they've been planning it for some time, but they just broke the news in recent months. And I don't anticipate that they would. Maybe we get surprised again. Fine. I wouldn't anticipate that you're going to see a BlackRock ETF until maybe the soonest at some point next year. Nothing's set in stone here, but they're doing things methodically, one step at a time. Again, copying the playbook of Grayscale, except for BlackRock might actually find success in converting their Bitcoin trust into a Bitcoin spot ETF. I'm not a financial advisor. You should not buy or sell anything because of anything I say or write. That would be a very, very, very bad idea. Until next time, to the moon, Lambo.